Welcome. Today we're going to dive into a chapter of the Quran that is it's foundational, it's vast, and honestly, it's often misunderstood. We're going to journey together into the spiritual landscape of Surah Al-Baqarah. So let's begin.
And as we should always begin, we seek refuge in God from the rejected adversary. A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajim.
And we start in the name of God, the most gracious, the most merciful. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim.
You know, every spiritual journey really starts with a plea. The very first chapter of the Quran, al-Fatiha, it builds and builds to this one universal request. Guide us to the straight path. It's a cry from the very depths of the soul, just asking for direction. But what happens when that guidance finally arrives, but in a form we totally don't expect?
Well, Surah Al-Baqarah is that answer. It's no accident that it comes right after Al-Fatiha. And yet, it doesn't always feel like the answer we were hoping for. The plea is for guidance, sure, but what if that guidance feels less like a comforting light and more like, well, like a heavy weight, a responsibility?
And this, right here, is the first big challenge. We so often expect guidance to be this big emotional lift, a moment of inspiration, a sudden feeling of peace. But Al-Baqarah gives us something completely different. It gives us structure. It gives us law, history, responsibility. It's a blueprint for our formation, not just a fleeting feeling.
So here's the thing we really have to get our heads around. You can't approach this chapter looking for a quick spiritual high. It's just not meant to be skimmed. Think of it more like a vast terrain, a landscape that the soul has to actually travel through to be educated, to be matured, and ultimately to be transformed.
Which brings us to a question that I'm sure many of you have asked at some point. With all the profound themes in this chapter, faith, law, building a community, why on earth is it named the cow? The answer, it turns out, reveals a much deeper layer of meaning.
The name actually comes from this very specific story about the children of Israel. They were given a simple command, sacrifice a cow. But instead of just obeying, they got caught up in endless questions. What color is it? How old is it? What are its characteristics? And in doing so, they made a simple act of surrender incredibly difficult for themselves.
And this is where it gets really brilliant. The classical commentators, people like Al-Rāzī and al-Qurṭubī, they saw that the name isn't just descriptive, it's diagnostic. It's like a warning label for the entire surah. It's telling us from the very beginning, hey, pay attention. Pay attention to how your own soul negotiates, how it complicates, how it resists guidance. The name itself is the very first lesson.
So this whole idea of a hidden lesson, it brings us to the two fundamental ways that this surah can be understood. Its outer form and its inner meaning. Or, in the Islamic tradition, what's known as the Zahir and the Batin.
See, on the outside, the Zahir, the surah is all about building a society. It's about law and community and history. But on the inside, the Batin, every single one of those laws acts like a mirror held up to our soul, showing us our inner resistance, our friction, and our potential for real spiritual growth.
And that outer meaning? It's pretty straightforward. This is a Madani surah, right? It was revealed when the first Muslim community was just getting established. So it acts almost like a constitution, laying down the principles for everything from family and finance to justice and worship. And its length? That's intentional too. It tells us that building a just society and a sound character is a long, deliberate process.
But then, you get this incredible insight from the Sufi master al-Qushayrī. And this just unlocks everything. He says the whole point of a command isn't to weigh you down. It's a spiritual diagnostic tool. It's designed to show you precisely where your heart clenches up, where your ego digs in its heels and says no, where you resist surrender.
So when you look at it this way, Surah Al-Baqarah suddenly becomes this kind of training manual. It's a guide for taming that part of us, the nafs, that negotiating self, that totally agrees with the truth in principle, but then fights it in practice. It's all about closing that gap between what we say we believe and how we actually live.
And what's really fascinating, something you might not expect, is that this theme of order and structure is actually encoded into the name of the surah itself through the ancient system of object numerology.
So, in this abjad system, every single Arabic letter has a numerical value. If we take the letters of Al-Baqarah and we add their values together, we get a total of 338. Then we reduce this number by adding its digits, so 3 plus 3 plus 8, that equals 14. And finally, 1 plus 4 is
5. That's it. The numerical signature of the surah's name is 5. So what does the number 5 even mean in this context? Well, think about it. In traditional symbolism, it represents discipline, law, structure, and balance. I mean, just think of the 5 daily prayers, a framework of regularity that shapes our entire day, prioritizing that consistent practice over just some spontaneous feeling. The encoded message here is so powerful. This journey requires order before you can experience illumination. Okay, so how do we pull all of this together? What does it mean for us right now? This ancient wisdom about spiritual formation happening through structure, it actually has some profound echoes in our modern understanding of the self. What's incredible is that modern psychology actually confirms what this surah has been teaching for centuries. Real, lasting moral change is a slow process, right? It's about neural integration. Our identity isn't really shaped by a few peak experiences, but by our repeated, daily practices. And so crucially, spirituality needs structure to survive, just like structure needs spirit to keep from becoming rigid and lifeless. Surah Al-Baqarah insists on having both.
So as we approach this great surah, maybe the question for us isn't whether it's long or demanding. The real question, the one we have to ask our own hearts, is this: do we prefer what is easy over what is true? God shows us where we hesitate, not to overwhelm us, but to heal us. The very thing that feels heavy is so often the medicine that will make us whole.
And so maybe we can close together with this beautiful supplication, this munajat, that just captures the spirit of this whole journey. O lawgiver who knows our weakness, train us without breaking us. Bind us to you through practice until obedience becomes rest. Ameen. And I want to share that this profound way of looking at the surah was compiled by Mir Ali Shah, a seeker who shares these insights through the Living the Wisdom of the Qur'an podcast. We're so grateful to be able to share this with you.
And so, I'll leave you with this final thought to carry with you. If what feels heavy is what's meant to make you whole, then where, in your own life, does your heart hesitate?